Claire Randall is a married combat nurse in 1945, but she is mysteriously sent back in time to 1743. There she becomes torn between two vastly different men in two completely separate lives in Outlander.
Hi, I'm Rachel, and I'm here with Liz and Aaron to review Outlander on Starz. We've all just seen it. Liz, what did you think?
It's not my cup of tea.
I knew it would
But
be.
I think the problem I have with it all revolves around character believability. And it's ridiculous because it's a fantasy and it's this really, really ridiculous fantasy. But if you are being sent back in time, I don't see any panic. I don't see any real drama. I don't see any real fear from our main character. And that takes me completely out of the show.
I feel exactly the same way about, there's just no drama, and she's not scared. The drama is so low stakes. The pace is too slow. It's based on a series of 8 novels. This is only the first one. I don't know how they're going to do it, if they're going to do it like Game of Thrones, but it's kind of like
I was gonna say, it's
Starz
sort of,
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like Game of Thrones meets Downton Abbey is exactly how I would like to describe it. Where it gets borderline is it does get into a little bit of soap opera land, and I think that's going to be a danger for
I don't even know where is that? Like,
Where
there's
is
just,
that? It's
I don't know.
between-
It's like,
Love triangle. There's a
there's
love
a
triangle.
love triangle.
but he's a 250 years in the future. There's not any love triangulation like in the present.
So we have a married lady, and she goes back in time, and so she's now separated from her husband, and unfortunately, her only company is this amazingly hulky, good-looking man who she's going to try not to fall in love with.
You break his arm if you do it like that. You have to get the bone of the upper arm in the correct position before it slips back into joint.
It doesn't hurt anymore.
It will. It'll be tender for about a week. You'll need a sling.
There's a lot of emphasis on the romantic part of the story, but I do feel like, we have our main character as a nurse, and so we have some medical stuff going on here. We have 1743, and we are seeing operation. I don't know what you would call that, but you're seeing stitches and different things like that. So you have a medical component to the show.
Yeah.
And you have a
Barely.
historical component to the show where you're seeing, the dress, the culture, everything from the 18th century, which is well used. At least the show is taking full advantage of the time period that
And
it's
it looks
in.
good.
It looks great.
It
That's
looks
the only.
great.
It's really the best part about the show is the production values. Like everything about the show, production-wise, is great. Costume design, art direction, props. Like you definitely feel like you're there. But it's an underwhelming concept. Just hearing about it, I was like, okay, this could be cool.
Time travel's awesome.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound like a chauvinist, but I definitely feel like it's marketed towards a female audience.
It is. I think so.
And it's just not my cup of tea either. I was hoping that it would be, and we've seen 3 episodes, and by the end of the 3rd one, I was like, oh, okay, there's something going on. It's a little interesting. The 3rd episode was a little more interesting to me because it dealt with the church and religion a little bit. There was a boy that everyone thought was possessed, and she was like, no, he's not possessed.
Oh, yeah. There was an actual, exciting plot line.
But see, that's the thing, I guess.
episode.
So that's what you're saying by pacing, because I feel like, the 3rd episode, the plot is going to continue to pick up, I believe. And I enjoy it. I tell you what, this is one of the shows where I would actually continue watching it, but I know that's not necessarily because it's the best show, but it's somehow, it's fluffy in a sweet way, and I'm on board with the characters. And I will say, I think the strength of the show is the characters. Our main protagonist character, she's very spirited.
The performances or the characters? Because I didn't think the performances were that.
No, I think
great.
the character of Claire is a good protagonist to have.
She's a totally interesting character.
She's very interesting.
Yeah.
She's
They
a
don't
nurse.
do very much with her.
Well,
I feel like.
first of all, she is a nurse, and she's put back in a time when, women had less rights, so you're seeing her sort of come up against that.
But she's not really encountering that much.
Well, that's because
Drama,
she's with
danger.
the nice Irish people.
It's what you said before. There's no real danger.
Well, she almost got raped. Come on.
But she's coming to this land wearing half a dress with a lot of medical knowledge that they don't have and a lot of entitlement. And she bounces against, she pushes against people, but not to any, I feel like if this really happened, she would be dead.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see a little bit more terror coming from her.
Well, and I think, though, here's the thing, too. The conceit of the show is a little bit silly. The first episode is just sort of dealing with that, so I forgive the whole idea that somehow we have to have a woman travel back in time. And that's awkward, because it's supposed to be a realistic feeling show. But I think if you get past that point, then it works for me.
Something that I'm also trying to negotiate here is the fact that it's a very racy show. It takes a card from Game of Thrones, and there's a little bit of nudity.
There's some nakedness.
But it also seems aimed towards a female audience and a heterosexual female audience. And so we have a lot of naked women in this show that's aimed for heterosexual
There's
women.
tender lovemaking scenes.
Tender
That's
scenes.
true, there are.
But it just seemed like a little odd. It's like, well, it feels like a show where a man directed it thinking what a woman might want.
Outlander is just a little underwhelming for me. Granted, I realize I'm not the audience, so I'll give it a stream it.
The production values are there, and in theory, it sounds like a great idea. So I'm going to give it a little bit of a chance here, and I'm going to say stream it.
I really enjoyed this show. There's a possibility that it could become too sappy, but for now, I think it has a lot to offer. So I'm giving it a see it.
Well, that's 2 full tickets, which is a stream it for Outlander.
Cheers!
That's like
That's
what
what it
Scotland
sounds like. There you go.
Scottish sounds like to me.
Just